In March, I have a couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll get going with the meeting. Not going to waste a lot of time. In March, we'll have Airport Director Mark Zavasio to give us an update, and that will include his update on Taxiway Echo, full-length taxiway runway 523. Now, most of you already heard this, but I want to brag again. They were going to demolish the tail end of Taxiway Charlie, which we all use from the run-up pad down to runway 531. But we went to the manager on your behalf, on behalf of the users of the airport. I called the FAA in Orlando, the planner for the whole southern region of Florida. And between the airport manager and the FAA, they've agreed to not demolish that section of taxiway. So we will keep that taxiway. It made logic. It was a perfectly good taxiway. And why spend money to demolish that taxiway? So that was a win-win for VASI and for you guys, the users of the airport. The city of Venice is still on hold. No events in the city of Venice. So that means we can't have our airport open house. There's no Young Eagles, and we won't have any picnics, VASI picnics after Young Eagles. Okay, our scholarships for this year, I'm working with Rotary Futures at the Venice High School. They coordinate all the scholarships, and that is for students in an aviation-oriented career. Doesn't have to be a pilot, could be an aeronautical engineer. And right now we have two young ladies over at Embry-Riddle studying aeronautical engineering. So that's our scholarship report. I want to send out a shout out to Ken McGill, who kicked in extra money for dues and scholarships just the other day. Good job, Ken. We have a young man coming from California, Herman Tanner. He's a CFI, wants to get in touch with everybody here and get established on the base. Possibly, I didn't see his name here, but after the speech, after the presentation, we'll get Tanner on to say a few words. So I'm going to go right into our speaker. But remember, we got everybody muted, and we'll stay muted to eliminate background noise. So Dan, when it's your turn, you'll have to unmute, and I will mute. And then we're going to have probably time for some question and answers at the end. And at that point, you can unmute, ask your question, and we'll see how that works out. Our speaker this evening, if you've ever looked on YouTube, you know Dan Gryder. He's a very popular YouTuber. His latest channel is called Probable Cause, very informative about different aircraft accidents and what really happened. Not what the NTSB said, right, Dan, but what really happened. He's a retired Delta 777 captain, Gold Seal certified flight instructor. He owns and operates a DC-3. You may have seen him up at Sun and Fun. I imagine you'll probably get it in this year. And he gave a VASI presentation last spring to us on engine failure on takeoff and the minimum maneuvering speed. And I showed the video with flight chops and a great presentation. I marked my airspeed indicator the next day after that, and I know a lot of you have marked your airspeed indicator with that minimum maneuvering speed. It's a great presentation. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me turn it over to Mr. Dan Gryder. And Dan, you'll have to unmute your mic. And I recommend going to this.
How's that? Got it? Okay, all right. All right, very good. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm glad to be back with you guys, and I see a very robust group of pilots out here on a evening. Instead of hitting the beach and drinking beer where you would rather be, you're trapped inside your cubicle having to listen to me. So there's something wrong there, but we'll press on anyway. Yeah, the Dave's opening comments here. I'll address a couple things first and then launch into a little calendar and zoom through this kind of quick. Dave introduced me as a very popular YouTuber, and I disagree with that. I have become very unpopular with the things that I have come out with and said, and I'll go into some of the reason for why that is. I kind of feel like we've been all sitting on the sidelines, afraid, for reasons of becoming politically correct, to not say what needs to be said. And our illustrious government, NTSB, really has they've $150 million budget and a staff of over 500, and General Aviation is the lowest on their list. They don't have any intensity to investigate an accident and produce a reasonable probable cause within a reasonable time. So by the time that we see a probable cause out of the NTSB, it's at least 2 and sometimes 3 years later. We've already forgot about it and moved on. The lessons to be learned are when the accident is fresh and we're all still thinking about it and remember the details of it. I can't remember where I was last week, let alone an accident that happened 3 years ago. So my complaint started 15 years ago with the NTSB, and it has festered and festered. And so I am not necessarily popular on YouTube, but my take here is that I'm one of the YouTubers that is not monetized. I don't allow YouTube to pay me, and I don't allow people to pay me, and I have no sponsors. I don't have any source of income, and I don't ask for any income. Therefore, I have no obligation to any individual or party. I'm simply going to tell you what I think, and take it or leave it. It's unfiltered, and most of the time it is an unpopular opinion. Often I'm accused of Monday morning quarterbacking the accident that just happened, and I try not to Monday morning quarterback quite so quick until I have a little bit of a heads up. But I want you to know that in probably 90% of the general aviation fatal accidents, the data is out there pretty quick, and it's pretty obvious what the guy did. You're all pilots, and you know, if you were at the Venice airport and you saw a T6 make a low pass and pull it inverted and doing an accelerated stall, and you watched him go in, we don't really know you need to go out there and find the wreckage and try to put it together and establish control continuity. The guy was doing low-level aerobatics and he stalled the airplane. I just got a low battery alert here. This thing should be plugged in there. Give me a thumbs up if you're all still with me here.
Yeah, we got you now. Got video and audio now. Got you now.
Okay. All right. So anyway, that's been the premise there, and I started working on this. And you have seen me on a lot of other YouTube channels. Blanco Lirio and Scott Perdue are in the audience here tonight. I'm going to try to pick at them a little bit here. But Blanco Lirio has done a tremendously good job on aircraft accidents and jumping right in and discussing them and getting the information there very quickly on what has happened in each one of those accidents. So that's where it is. I did just start a YouTube channel just a little over 90 days ago, and that thing has kind of zoomed to the top. It's already got right around 10,000 subscribers, but the number that I look at is minutes watched in the last 28 days, and they send you these metrics on how your channel is doing. So that tells me that what I'm saying is resonating with pilots, and they are listening. My minutes watched per month figure is way up there. So to me, it doesn't matter if I have subscribers or not. I can tell if you're watching my videos because it affects that number there, number of million minutes watched per month, and it's in millions. It's crazy, but they keep track of that, and you can on an app on your phone, you can tell exactly where you're standing and whether or not your message is resonating. So I feel like our NTSB is a bloated, overpaid government slob who are very comfortable in their jobs, but they're not actually performing the function of letting us know what caused the accident. Most of the ones that I look at after the NTSB has looked at it, not only did they get their probable cause way wrong, none of their people on staff are pilots, so they can't understand the very, very simple, basic things that all of you do about flying, or what it takes to turn base to final, or what a weather decision might have done to you. They don't have that background because in their staff of 500, they probably got 7 pilots on staff. It's absurd, the low talent base that they have at the NTSB. So that's been my premise, is to just balls to the wall. Let's just say what needs to be said. In 2020, we produced for the first time a fatal accident summary, and I'm very happy with that. I keep track of general aviation fatal accidents on a daily basis as they occur in real time. We dump those into our own database, and by January 8th of this year, I produced a document and an Excel spreadsheet and an interactive form where you can sort those. There were 188 fatal accidents in the year 2020, general aviation fatal accidents. Now you can sort them by how they died, what kind of airplane, how old they were, whether they had an instrument rating. So all that data is available on my website. It's free, dangryder.com. You won't find anything for sale on any of my stuff. My point here is for all of us to collaboratively look at this information and help your neighbor. If there's information that your neighbor needs to help him stay alive, share that information with him. And that's what I've been able to do via the other YouTube channels that have helped me with my message. I'm going to get into AQP in just a second here, but I wanted you to understand the foundation of where this is coming from. Our fatal accident rate in the United States has not gotten better, it's gotten worse, and you all are seeing it in the form of increased insurance and increased regulations. What we need is to make that fatal accident rate fall off the edge of the earth. We could easily help this by more than 50% with just a few very minor changes. So the program I started with flight shops a couple years ago, and that Dave mentioned in that video, that kind of started off the YouTube theme was the things that the airliners are doing that the GA people don't. So the concept that evolved out of there is called AQP, and I know it's another acronym, but in the airlines, AQP came along because they needed a way of fixing their airliner problems. Now, this has been years ago, but I'm going to explain basically what AQP is, and it's not something to be afraid of. This is a very good thing. The idea is that when you go to take your private pilot check ride, you do a steep turn and a soft field takeoff. Those are maneuvers, but they're not scenarios. A scenario where you're flying your Bonanza and you run into IMC and you're low on fuel, that's a scenario. Your check ride to get your private pilot certificate doesn't have anything to do with those scenarios. So the airlines went to scenario-based training. Now, it was true that you still had to do an engine failure or a rejected takeoff, some of those specific tasks, but they also developed scenario-based training, which was designed to help people train for the real life scenarios that they might encounter out there on the line. So what we did is we took all the aviation data that we had and we built the scenarios trying to figure out how is it we keep killing ourselves in general aviation airplanes. And as it turns out, there's only about 20 good ways to kill yourself in an airplane. Every time an accident happens, my phone rings, I get a ping, I start looking at the end number, and I'm already thinking, which bucket I'm going to put it in. It's going to take me days, a week, 10 days. I'm going to start looking at it. I'm going to start figuring it out. But within a couple weeks, I'm going to have a pretty good idea which bucket it goes in. You can see the same sheet that I'm on right now by do a Google search on AQP, Aviation 101, AQP for General Aviation. Aviation 101's got a whole bunch of videos that we did on it, as well as Flight Chops. Flight Chops has this document as well. So this is page 13 out of this 40-page document that explains, you've heard about the 50 ways to leave your lover. What's the 20 ways that we can kill ourselves in an airplane? Steep turn and Shondell and Lazy 8 and short field takeoff are not on here. Those aren't methods of killing yourself. Those are methods of learning how to fly your aircraft. Once you learn how to fly, what are the 20 scenarios that you're likely to run into that you need to know about, and what can you do about those in advance to help yourself? So all of this is free. This is not something I'm trying to sell. I've put a tremendous amount of time into it. Trying to bend this fatal accident rate is all I'm doing. I don't have anything for resources except my cell phone and a banjo and a 6-pack of Miller Lite. I'm kind of a one-man show. That's all I got. I do have a computer, but I have spent a tremendous amount of time compiling this data, looking at it, and brainstorming how can I help my Venice aviation buddies learn about this stuff so they can see what is it that's about to bite them. That's all I want you to know. What's about to bite you? So of these 20, maybe 10 of them don't apply to you, which is fine. Go through there with the red pen and X out the ones that do not apply to you, and it's not going to happen. The other 10 could apply to you and could be a factor. Dave Wimberly talked about in his introduction DMMS, and that's a defined minimum maneuvering speed. That's another technique from the airlines. I'm sure you got a few Bonanza flyers in the crowd here tonight. I was out at Wichita 2 years ago, sitting at the bar having a beer with a guy, and I got to talking to him, and it turns out he was the #2 guy at American Bonanza Society, ABS in Wichita. And so we got to talking, and I didn't know him. I knew the other guy, but I didn't know him. And I said, well, what kind of airplane are you flying? And he told me it's a Bonanza. And I said, well, just out of curiosity, what kind of speeds do you fly in your A36 when you're coming to land? Dave VFR, what kind of speeds do you like to fly? And he said, I fly 100 on the downwind, 90 on base, and 80 on final. I said, okay, that's good. Now, where does that number come from? And what kind of protection is that affording you? 90 on base in a 30-degree turn. How close to a stall are you? Are you 8% away, 12%, 30% away? How close to a stall are you? And he said, I have no idea. I just fly 100, 90, and 80. And I said, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a 30% savings? That's money in the bank. Some of you have savings account for a rainy day. There's some fudge here that we don't want to cut into unless we absolutely have to. So the FAA has long required a 30% fudge factor. You're supposed to stay 30% above stall at all times. So what we do in general aviation is the fact that we have our airspeed indicators marked. Each of you that fly, you know that the bottom of the green and bottom of the white is power off and power on stalling speed. That's fine. That's where the airplane is going to actually stall. Where's 30% above that? And how would you be able to figure it out? So that brainstorm came to me several years ago. Why don't we develop some kind of a rudimentary marking for the airspeed indicator as just a reminder? Most of you guys that get sent to the store to pick up groceries for your wives or girlfriends, I guarantee you go to the store and come back out without one thing that you were supposed to get, you are going to hear about it. What you got to do is you got to write it down. Milk, eggs, bread, cheese, Miller Lite, and kitty litter. Those are the things that you need. You come out of that store without the Miller Lite, and she is going, you're going to hear about it. So write it down. You need a reminder. I need a reminder. And that's how come the airspeed indicator itself is already colored. We already know our flap speed. Our top of the green is normal operating speed. Red line is at the top of the airspeed indicator. Why not one more little reminder of where this magic 30% fluff number is? Don't go below that until you're squared away. And out of the data that we did for 2020, we had 188 fatal accidents in the year 2020, the year that just closed. 42 of them occurred day VFR below 1,000 feet in the traffic pattern, either leaving or coming into the traffic pattern. 42 fatals, which was number 12 on this sheet, loss of speed awareness. I don't know how they did it, but they allowed it to get slow. They banked it. And once you're into that, maybe somebody else here can tell me how good your stall spin recovery technique is from 700 feet. For me, I'm not that good. I'm not going to get a bonanza out of a spin from 700. I'm good, but I'm not that good. I can get a bonanza out of a spin from 1,800 or 2,000 would sure help a lot. But based on the final at 700, your spin endorsement in your hip pocket doesn't do you any good. Avoidance is all we got. Avoid this thing. Don't go there. This is like going to a bar at 1 a.m. when you've already had too many and you're going in a biker bar. Don't go in there. This is not a good idea. It's not going to come out well. Avoid that. Avoid your low speed scenarios. Avoid those. So that's how the thing evolved. Our fatal accident rate has gotten atrocious, and you probably have got some friends yourselves that you have lost, but we've not done well here in the last couple years, and now you're seeing it on your insurance premiums. We're going to get down to the place where insurance is not even offered in general aviation over age 70. They're not even going to offer it. That's the next step that they're going to go to. We have got to, not just for an insurance benefit, look at the benefit that you get by staying alive. Don't die in your airplane. Don't go do one of these when you didn't have to. So all of this is purely information, and I'm going to zoom through them one at a time. I encourage you to download, print it out, read it, spend an hour. I took 4 years to develop this. Do me a favor, take 1 hour to read it. And if you want to throw it in the trash can, then throw it in the trash can. I'm good with that. Number one is spatial disorientation during the day, SD-D. Number two, spatial disorientation at night. For people who don't normally fly instruments, who might bite off on trying to find the horizon when there is no horizon to fly. Number three is intentional IMC after takeoff. For you guys that are instrument rated, you get a clearance, you go out there and you make a takeoff and you rotate right up into the goo. This is where the accident happens. It's the transition from the runway to nose up. You're putting the gear up, retracting flaps, turning off your boost pump, hitting the ident, talking to ATC and picking up a new heading all at the same time. You get distracted. Where's the wreckage normally found? It's about a mile off the end of the runway. Every time I see a IMC takeoff by an instrument pilot where they find the airplane nose down about a mile beyond the end of the runway, that's an IMC. That's an intentional IMC. That's not unintentional. They knew the weather was 200 overcast and they rotated up into it. Should have been good. They were not prepared for the workload. I don't know if you saw the Flight Chops video where I tried to encourage him. Don't talk to that lady. That's your controller. Don't talk to her. You fly your airplane. She's going to be there. And I set him up for pressure where I knew she was going to call him and give him an instruction. And I said, don't you answer her. You stay on the gauges and you fly your airplane. Don't get involved in that. Number four is unintentional IMC after takeoff. That's the VFR pilot that rotates up into the clouds, didn't know that he was about to go up into the clouds. 5, buzzing and acro, impromptu air shows. It happened about 6 times in 2020. People trying to put on an air show and they're not air show pilots and it didn't work out. I'm not an aerobatic guy, so that's not a player for me. I do enjoy a low pass every now and then, but I don't go upside down, and I don't do loops, and I don't do rolls. If you're going to do that at your local airport, you better know what you're doing, and the ground is down there, and it's not flexible. When you strike the ground, it's going to be over. Mishandled abnormal. Number 6, an event occurs in the aircraft. Event causes distraction. Distraction causes loss of control. It's just like distracted driving. You get distracted on number 6, something happens, probably doesn't matter what it was, but you lost control of the airplane, or you drove it into the ground reaching for something, or trying to set your iPad, trying to alter your route, trying to enter a flight plan, trying to switch frequencies. Look at all the things that are in the cockpit, single pilot, that are going to bite you, that are wanting your attention when you've got your hand on the yoke or the stick and you're not paying attention to what you're doing. Terrain collision, still lots of fatal accidents, flying right into the terrain. Didn't know it was there. It's night or IMC and you flew right into the face of the cliff. It's the people that don't have an iPad or terrain or a Garmin or some kind of a radio that has a terrain database that can show them not just cliffs, but it's antennas and buildings. The technology is crazy good out there, and you can use just a simple iPad to avoid flying into something that you shouldn't be flying into. Loss of AHRs in flight. We just did a video on this. Tragic loss of a Citation jet 1 year ago. They lost their AC inverter, and in a jet you have AC and DC power. They lost their inverter, which knocked out their primary captain's attitude indicator. Their HSI knocked out their yaw amp and their autopilot, and they told ATC. They promptly lost control of the airplane. In a jet, the problem is always overspeed. It's got a very low VNE, and those guys got the nose down and took it right through VNE and didn't know it until it was too late. They pulled the right wing off the airplane in flight. That was a year ago. If you get a chance to go to my YouTube channel and take a look at that, we did a memorial visit. We went and visited the crash site. That accident and loss of 4 lives among that Citation jet was specifically caused by loss of AHRs in flight, and it was totally avoidable. If they'd had an iPad up and ready and somebody ready to fly that airplane, didn't matter if there was VFR weather available, didn't matter if AHRs was working or not, could have been saved. Non-stabilized approach, number 9. You got to fly a stabilized approach depending on where you are and what you're doing. You land high, long, and fast, and you're going to get hurt. This is the Earnhardt crash. Nobody died in that one, but they should have died. They should not have been able to survive that. They got really lucky on getting everybody out of that airplane. But if you're landing high, fast, you're white over white, you're unstabilized, you're VREF plus 20, you need to know what your VREF is. Have a target VREF and know what the qualifiers are for going around. There's 8 criteria for a stabilized approach. They're all in here. Know when to use a stabilized approach. You don't have to use one all the time. I enjoy a hook turn downwind to base to final and a little zippy airplane sometimes. And if I'm on a 7,000 foot runway, that's a little bit different deal. If I'm in a heavy twin in IMC, you can better believe that I'm going to be fully configured and checklist complete on speed by a 2-mile final. And I'm going to be very bored for the last 2 minutes. I'm going to fly stabilized, and I'm going to know what my ref speed is, and I'm going to fly it all the way in. Number 11, loss of thrust on takeoff. Huge, huge, huge. Always has been. Several in Florida in the recent months. The problem is you lose an engine on your airplane at takeoff, 200, 300, 400 feet. The human tendency is to pull back on the stick or the yoke. Surprise, shock, and confusion sets in. You will always pull back. I've proved it. I've videoed 20 applicants in this scenario. I got the video to show you the stick or the yoke. It moves aft. When I shut the fuel off, they are pulling the yoke aft every time. It's amazing. If you're not ready for it, you're going to do the same thing. Take your instructor and go out and practice this. Don't shut off your fuel, but just close the throttle and get used to doing several of these. Set you up in a climb, a VX climb, close the throttle, get light in the seat, get the nose down, and establish a glide. It's that problem, they say establish glide, but it's that same problem that you got where no one ever establishes glide. If you're climbing out at VX and you pull them and you lose thrust and pull the nose up a little bit more, your wing is clean and you're going to stall. You're going to be in the stall within just a couple of seconds. So that area is huge. Look at the accident data from 2020, category number 11, loss of thrust on takeoff. Loss of speed awareness, we've already talked about that. DMMS, also, you can also placard. Keep in mind that VREF for your airplane is 1.3 VSO. FAA defines that for you. It might be a little while since you've actually taken a check ride, but VREF in your airplane is 1.3 VSO. You can add a few knots for grandma if you want to, but 1.3 VSO is your absolute base. Most airplanes, if you do the math, 1.3 VSO is the same thing as VX. So if you stick a placard on VREF, that same placard, that same thin line is also your VX. If you need to clear a 50-foot obstacle, climb out at VX. Your next line that you want to climb out, DMMS, is also VY. They're just really good reminders so that you don't have to think in terms of numbers. You can just look at your airspeed indicator and go, oh yeah, I need to lower the nose a little bit. I'm below DMMS. I need to lower the nose a little bit. VMC rollover, number 13, is for twin engine airplanes. Still a huge, huge problem for those that fly twins. Loss of thrust on an engine, you've got to lower the pitch and establish pitch plus power equals airspeed. If you don't lower the pitch, you're gonna roll over. Doesn't really matter if you feathered it or put the gear up or if you had auto feather, none of that matters. If you never lower the pitch, you're gonna roll over. I did years and years and years of instruction in king airs, giving instruction in king airs. I could simulate that all day long. I still do. I can take a throttle and you watch those guys raise the nose a little bit and that king air starts to go like that and I got to grab it at the last second. It's crazy. Lower the nose. If you're not about to hit a tree, lower the nose some more. You got to get your pitch down. Mid-air collision is a big deal and it's more and more and more and more. We're keeping our eyes inside of our cockpits, playing with our iPads and our phone, taking pictures and doing other stuff in the traffic pattern when you need to be looking for other airplanes. You're gonna get hit out there. Keep your head on a swivel, keep your eyes outside. ADSB has helped us a lot, but what it's caused us to do is keep our eyes inside the cockpit looking for things on our iPad when you should be outside looking for the traffic and occasionally looking at your screen to see where the traffic is. Get your head outside, you're gonna get hit in the traffic pattern. We had, I believe, 12 aircraft involved in mid-air collisions in 2020. A huge, huge number on mid-airs. In-flight icing, crazy, but probably not a factor for Florida, but for those of you that travel north to other places in the wintertime, know where the freezing level is. You non-Fiki airplane drivers, don't get stuck up there in the clouds in moisture because you're going to ice it up. I know there's a Delta guy on here. We lost a Delta guy in 2020 in Louisiana, 182, 7,000 feet in Alabama, someplace. 4 people on board. They iced it up severely, stalled, spun, and everybody died. And he was a Delta captain. Doesn't really matter how old you are or how much gray hair you have or how many type ratings you have. Icing doesn't care. You ice that airplane up and you have got a problem. Avoid ice. Messed up go around. Practice your go arounds. Look how many accidents happened in 2020 where they crammed the power to it. The nose came up. They sucked the flaps up and they stalled right there. Your go around procedure should be a memory item, should be something that you're totally ready for and you know what buttons to push, how to do it. Most of the time when you push the throttle in, that nose comes up, it rears up like a horse. You got to give it more nose down as the nose is coming up so that you don't enter that. Go out and get a CFI and practice a few go arounds from 50 feet, fully configured, gear down, full flaps, everything done. Go around and watch what that nose down does. Be ready for the go around because it will bite you. The messed up go around is number 16. Failed flight control system. That's a maintenance thing, either pre-flight or something else happened. This is not a real high one. We were actually doing a very, very good job on maintenance and taking care of our airplanes, keeping them hangared, keeping an eye on them, keep them properly fueled, check pre-flight your airplanes, make sure controls are good. When you walk around it, if you're wiggling an aileron and you're hearing a binding noise, that's not good. Go ahead and get that checked out. Flight control malfunctions and fails from that, number 17 in the year 2020 were not very prevalent. Rejected takeoff, quite a few in the year 2020. The person makes a takeoff on the runway and they don't realize that they've eaten up 5,000 feet of runway and the airplane hasn't lifted off yet. Have some kind of a metric for whatever airplane you're flying at, whatever runway you're at, some kind of a good idea. This airplane needs to be getting light by the time I get to the gas tank, or by the time I get to the windsock, or by the time I cross this taxiway. This airplane needs to be getting light. If it's not, you're a rejected takeoff. You don't have to figure out why it's not wanting to fly. Just have some kind of an idea in mind before you round the corner and push the power in. Be thinking, all right, I'm in a 182 today. In 1,500 feet, roughly by that second mark right there, if this thing is wanting to fly by right there, I got to chop the throttle. You have to. Don't go off the end. It's almost always a fireball, and nobody survives these rejected takeoffs that are initiated way too late. Also, there's no rejected takeoff required on any single engine FAA check ride. It's not mentioned. You don't practice it. You don't check it. So you're totally in the blind. It's an AQP maneuver, but it's not an FAA maneuver. But it's one of the heavy hitters in 2020. Failed rejected takeoff. Seat slides back. I don't know if you saw the video I did from Palatka, where the couple flew in, got gas. It was evening time at Palatka, Florida. They made a takeoff in their Piper Comanche. And the interesting thing on this was I was just at Palatka last week on another trip, and I took off on the same runway. And you know, the accident report read, and I hadn't thought about this until I was there, I rounded the corner and took off on the same runway. It seems like it was runway 17 or 18. It was kind of facing south, but as you round the corner there and go into position, this runway's got a little hump in it, and it's got an intersecting runway. The runway really appears short from the north end of this thing looking south. It's because of the hump. You can't see the far end. It gives you the illusion that it's a short runway. So what did that guy do? Same thing I did. I kind of held the brakes, got all my checklists done, make sure it was good. I brought some power in and then let it roll. It's exactly what he did. He actually held the brakes, brought it up to, they say, almost full power, released the brakes, and he rolled about 1,000 feet, and his seat slid back. It's a classic, almost purely vertical climb. He was hanging onto the yoke, and there's no recovery from that. Go back and watch the video. That's called Palatka. Posted that a couple weeks ago, and I went through and showed who the people were, and I showed the actual accident sequence on that. So that's the AQP maneuvers in a nutshell. It's voluntary. I'm not trying to cram anything down anyone's throat, and I'm certainly not trying to sell anybody anything. I'm just trying to offer a helping hand out there and help us amongst ourselves fix this little problem that we got going on. And it sure seems like to me, with just a little bit of effort. All right, I think I'm back. Are we still good? Okay, good. I think with just a little bit of effort on everybody's part, we could do a whole lot better. So that's, I'm gonna wrap up my AQP presentation there. Remember, ACA is Aviation Content Creator Awards, and that's going to be the weekend prior to AirVenture up at KSQI. You're all invited. Free camping, free parking. I'm going to play the banjo. Come on up. If you're on your way to Oshkosh, that's the weekend prior. We'll have a great time. All your favorite aviation YouTube, all the big dogs, the really big dogs, they'll all be there. And that's where we hand out the awards for aviation content creators is that weekend. And that is, Dave, I'm going to pass it back to you. That is it in a nutshell. If you see me on YouTube, I have gotten kind of off the chain. I'm a little bit tired of NTSB and their lackadaisical methods. They take too long. They're not giving us any information, and they're certainly not helping us in any way. So I'm unfiltered, and I know it. I'm pissed off. know it, but because I have my own channel and I don't have any obligation, I can't get fired from this job. I can't lose a sponsor, and I'm not going to lose any money by what it is that I have to say. So I figure, Bessie, bar the door. I'm just going to say it, and whatever happens, happens. And I hope we can all help ourselves a little bit. Dave Wimberly, back to you.
Okay, great. Yeah, great presentation. Everybody's muted, but we can open it up for some questions and answers. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and then try to make it work. I'll listen up to the other guys. If you got a question, go ahead now. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, thanks so much for what you're doing. We really appreciate it. And I love your on-screen graphics. Enjoy the channel. I don't know, has anybody mentioned to you that there's not only YouTube, but kind of a new thing out there called Rumble? It's basically the same thing. It's just a different channel.
I have heard of that. My problem is that I am so technologically limited. I'm barely on YouTube. I don't have Instagram. I do quite a bit of stuff on Facebook, but I don't have Snapchat, Instagram. I still enjoy an E6B and a slide rule. I wear Army boots to go work on my airplane, and I use Craftsman tools. I'm not good with technology, and I'm not going to be very good at switching over to a video platform, but several people have suggested a different platform. I just don't know that about it.
Yeah, it's just another app. You can download that on your phone too, if you ever get a chance to look at it. But just trying to help get the word out to as many people as I can, because what you're doing is just so important to the aviation community.
I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Question? I see we got Scott Perdue and Juan Brown on there. You guys want to say something? Scott, Juan?
Yeah. Here.
Go ahead, Juan.
Hey.
Juan Brown, go ahead. You have to unmute your mic.
Hey, is that working? Can you hear me now?
Gotcha now. This is Juan Brown, Broncolario channel on YouTube, Broncolario.
Hey, what's going on, Dan? Where's my dang tacos?
That's hilarious. You know, I got so much grief for beating up on Juan. I said, well, you just don't know Juan. He don't care.
That's right. Yeah. Regarding the NTSB, and if Scott's in the house here, I mean, we can attack him or criticize him, but we can also maybe help influence him or maybe guide him a little bit. I think that last video, Scott Perdue, where we were sitting in the hangar and talking about the B-17 thing, and Scott was straightening me out on some of the facts and issues with operating a B-17. We're talking about the B-17-909 crash. That video got wide, good reviews all the way around. And, you know, I think the folks at the NTSB are listening, and it may help influence some of their research and decision making in the final call, because in the interim report there, they had information that may be leading them down to the wrong conclusion. But if we talk about it amongst ourselves, and we might be able to help influence the outcome of the accident investigation, and give them some critical information that they may not know about, because stuff like that is just such ancient technology for a lot of folks. But anyways, the basic thing is we can maybe help influence instead of attack.
Well, I'm going to let you do the influencing. I'm going to do all the attacking, because I'm tired of it. And,
it kind of works. It'll kind of work, kind of good cop, bad cop kind of thing. And it's good that we have a good, healthy debate out there too at the same time. And it's all right if it's all out there online as well.
Exactly. I want to point out real quick too, the Kobe Bryant thing that happened yesterday. NTSB, those that you don't know, they just had the full board meeting on the Kobe Bryant crash. The #1 recommendation that came out of that came out because of Juan Brown and myself. That's our AQP influence. Their #1 recommendation that rolled off their lips as soon as they said probable cause was Scenario-based training. They're going to require scenario-based training for 135 helicopter pilots. That's getting away from the check ride in a helicopter where you have to do a steep turn. Scenario-based training is AQP. They've been watching Blanco Lirio. They've been listening to me. They know that scenario-based training, they didn't call it AQP, but that's what it is. AQP is scenario-based training for the scenarios that you're in. It's the number one thing that they said within 60 seconds after their probable cause. So Juan, that's a toast to you and me and Scott. We did influence the NTSB. That is there because of us.
Yeah, wow, that's great.
Scott Purdue is on here. He has a channel called Flywire. Watch him quite a bit. Scott, are you on board?
I am. I'm here.
Join in and give us your comments.
Okay. Well, what I was just back up what Juan was saying is I think we're actually having some influence with the NTSB, and Dan's playing kind of the gadfly and poking him with a stick, but we're giving him a different perspective. I've actually been called on a couple of videos that I've done from the NTSB, and they said, well, tell us how this works. In particular, one was the B-36TC at Corona that ran off the end of the runway. Actually, Dan and I did a video on that looked at it, and then the NTSB later called me up about it and wanted to talk about it, and I think that will probably influence their report. And I also talked with the guy who's doing it, the NTSB report for the B-17-909, and he's like, off on this direction, and it wasn't number 3 engine. And I've talked with the guy who overhauled the engine, or didn't overhaul it, sorry, but he analyzed the engine for the NTSB, and he agreed with me that it was the number 3 that grenaded. He left it in high power with one magnet firing, and it eventually blew up. And that I've heard several other people that agreed with me. And when I talked to the NTSB representative, he goes, no, it was impact damage. I said, you need to talk to a metallurgy guy, because that head blew apart. It wasn't sheared from impact damage. So
yeah, it did. And Scott, you're doing a great job with your channel. There's quite a few YouTube channels out there and more coming that my point is to try to influence the influencers. Those guys like Scott and Blanco Lirio, all those big dogs, Flight Chops, Aviation 101. I'm the little guy, but I'm trying to influence the big guys on what content that they can do that not only helps their channel, but also helps our industry. So my push is to keep more and more people involved in amateur accident investigation and discussing of these so that we can learn about it in advance. Scott and Juan do a great job. And I am kidding about the tacos, although I will say that every time I go out to eat Juan, he forgets his wallet every damn time. He says, oh, I forgot my wallet.
He bought me breakfast the other day. So.
That's a first. That's a historical first. You better frame that, because that ain't never happened before.
He's an airline pilot, right? No money.
That's right.
Any other questions, guys? Join in. Everybody jump right in if you got a question.
I have one, Dan. So Dan, okay. I closely follow your work for the last couple of years, and I really appreciate what you've been doing, and especially the AQP document that you release on Flight Chops and then Aviation 101. I download those, I read them, I printed them. Now, I think, if I may, a few comments. If those would be a bit more, if you could continue your work on them and maybe get them a bit more user-friendly, and maybe more people would be, it would be essentially make them more approachable. Maybe, I don't know, less acronym, more description, more standards basically of what you should do, what you should follow in terms of, like, think of a check ride standards, and maybe graphics if possible, or kind of ways of making it more approachable and more people would maybe use them. But anyway, I hope you continue your great work. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I fully agree with you. I want to reiterate that I'm one guy with, I do have a computer right here. AQP was written right here at this table on this computer. I got a banjo and a 6-pack of Miller Lite. So what you saw in that document, that's not state of the art, that's start of the art. I wrote it and I did the best I could with what I had. And I appreciate your comment because it reminds me how much refining I have got to do now. I want to put more graphics in there, make it more user friendly. Everything you said was exactly spot on. I'm aware of it. That first document is 45 pages and it sucks. You have to read hard to figure out what it is I'm trying to say in there. The information is there, but I'm literally a one-man show. This computer is 10 years old and that's all I got. So I'm working on it. I'm trying. That's what's coming up here in 2021. You should see some revised videos and some revised documents. All of it's free. I'm going to keep all that going. But your comment is spot on, brother. Absolutely spot on.
Anybody else join in?
Yeah, Dan, is George Gunn still up there, or did he retire?
Who?
What's that?
George Gunn, I think he was with the FISDO up there back in the 90s when I was running around up there.
Name doesn't sound familiar.
Okay.
I would say that your engine failure on takeoff, our group here in Venice, I pushed it pretty hard because it was just like a cathartic situation to me to see that video with flight chops and the get light in the seat, mark your airspeed. We talked about that at our lunch bunch quite a bit, and I know a lot of guys really thought that over, marked their airspeed, and at least guys were thinking about it. And
Yes.
It hit home here. It hit home here in Venice.
That's good. Well, it's the AQP style. I didn't invent it, but I think it's purely applicable for general aviation. These are my friends flying little airplanes.
Yeah.
So,
well, and your point about airplanes just falling out of the sky, a perfectly good airplane in the traffic pattern, we can't let that happen. And your push to do this is helping educate people.
we're giving it the college effort. I'm just thankful for groups like yourselves, pilots like yourselves that are receptive to at least listening and talking about it. Some of the other YouTube channels like Scott and Dan Milliken and my friend out in Kansas, Par for the Course, just did their very first aviation accident investigation video. Blanco, Lario, we beat each other real bad, but what Juan's probably number one in accident investigation discussion in detail, and his voice resonates well, and he's going to continue to zoom way to the top. So he and I talk often about that, and he's on board with that whole concept. So I just appreciate everybody being receptive to the concept of this is grassroots. It's voluntary. We want less regulation and less insurance problems. Let's think about this and work on this ourselves, and let's stay alive and help ourselves.
Well, in Venice, Florida, we have an older population, and that insurance situation as guys get older is front and center. And if anything can be done to help that situation, that would really hit home here. We got several guys talking about it right now. As they get older in age, it's critical. It's critical.
I actually have a question about that. As long as we have you guys here as a group, and my question is if you were able to get insurance, whether you're 70 or 80 years old or whatever, as long as you met certain training requirements, both initial in the airplane and recurrent, doing the AQP scenarios and things like that, would you be willing to do that training to pay less for insurance?
I
Any
would.
comments?
Yeah, I would.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, frankly, what the current insurance companies do, they don't really give you a huge break for doing training. And I've done a little investigation into this, and there's a large resistance on the part of aviation insurers. My concept was the aviation insurance people would just jump at the chance to pay less, to have fewer payouts. But it turns out that's not really the case. What they actually are fine with the number of insurers the reinsurers declining and the rates going up because they make more money. And they don't really care so much about a hull loss of $100, $150, $200,000. It's really not that big of a deal compared to a BizJet or a King Air or something like that when you're talking multi-million dollars. So there's it was an eye opener for me. I was able to talk to a couple of insurance folks, and they were honest with me, and I appreciate that. And they didn't tell me outright, but the way they answered my questions and they dodged certain questions, I could see they had no interest in giving people breaks for insurance by doing very much training. It just wasn't a big priority to them. So I'm trying to come up with a different concept that pilots can help pilots. If we do the training, you get a better deal because, hey, that's what I want to do is keep flying and have fewer people crashing. So
Yeah, the best deals are going to come when we amongst ourselves bend this rate. That's what they're looking at. They might give you a few % discount if you take some training, but the best thing we can do is cut this accident rate in half, and we can do that. We have to do that. Insurance is a good benefit. Staying alive is an even better benefit. You're in Florida, it's sunny, you got your airplanes, and you guys are at the age where you're enjoying life and you got all these toys. Don't die in your airplane. There's your biggest benefit. You get to stay alive.
absolutely.
Anybody else?
Dan, it's Pete Bartelli. You there? Am I coming through?
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead.
Oh, when I went through initial training on my airplane, I got it from a fellow in Louisville named Bob Hoffman, and he was an advocate of the AQP program. He was a retired U.S. Air Captain, I believe, and he provided me with a syllabus that had batting practice in the morning and then line-oriented flying in the afternoon. I thought that was a terrific way to be. I was familiar with that kind of training, and it was I believe he does it with everybody that's new to the Duke. So he started this years ago, and I don't know if you know him, but I would love to put you guys together and put your heads together about this very program.
I do know the name. I don't know that I've ever met him, but I do know the name. He's been doing Beechcraft training in those kind of airplanes for a long time. So
Right.
good guy. So I had a interesting thing just a couple of weeks ago. This guy was telling me his story about he crashed his seaplane and he had to go to the feds for some kind of a 709 ride and go through this course up in Michigan. He sits down at the table, and the instructor to do his 709 ride after his seaplane accident lays my AQP program on the table. Says, we're going to start with this right here. We're going to spend all day going over this document. I have no idea who the guy was or anything, but the program is getting out there. It's getting traction, and I appreciate guys like you thinking about it and passing around. I don't have it copyrighted. There's not anything. You can steal it, mark it up, trade it, whatever you want to do. Just get the information to your buddies.